This panel we're going to be looking at talking some about the upcoming 2026 General Assembly and just some issues related to that and other issues that we need to address. And I wanted to start with Addia. Addia, as you know, probably better than anyone in the state, that we've had some important pro-life victories that your organization has been central to over the last several years. We continue to praise God, as I mentioned before, that Kentucky's abortion ban remains in full effect despite numerous legal challenges. But we know our work's not finished. As you know, there are still thousands of preborn Kentuckians that are losing their lives every day, primarily now because of abortion pill trafficking. We've seen recent studies, a recent one that mentioned that one of the largest overseas producers of these deadly pills, something like 88% of those pills are coming into pro-life states, red states like Kentucky. What do you think are some of the important pro-life priorities that Kentucky should be addressing as we move forward and continue to want to save lives and build a culture of life?
Well, I hope, thank you. Yes. But I hope what I think, or what our organization, or what all of us think, and of course we work we team up together, working with Family Foundation in Kentucky. But we have important issues. We have what we call, we've always heard about the culture of death. Now we call it death by mail, death by vacation. And I'm going to talk in a minute about both ends of the spectrum because we're going to be talking about that. We've already begun the early dialogue with our legislators. But before I leave, and I think, David, you're going to have everybody pass this out, we have priorities kind of tentatively here on the pink sheet, and we have all the bills that your legislators have passed in Kentucky. Now, we can say that legally there are no abortions legally happening in Kentucky. And every day or every week, Greg and I count down the days on the radio show every week where we are. The last legal abortion performed in the Commonwealth of Kentucky was August 1st, 2023. It's remarkable. Did I say the right date, right year? Yes. I always have to kind of check myself.
23 or 22?
22. I'm sorry, 22. Shortly after Roe was overturned. So this is an incredible state. Your legislators have worked so hard. But the industry, it is an industry. It is a multi-million, billion-dollar industry that will not stop. And I'm going to give you one instance of something they've just done lately. In rural Kentucky and rural West Virginia, they have campaigns going on in 100 gas stations targeting young women with their abortion pills for free, 24/7 ads. It's a thing called Mayday Health. You can look them up later, not when I'm speaking or any of us are speaking, but look it up later and look how aggressive they are across the nation. So that's just one of many companies. So how do we address it? How do we stop it? So one of the things that we've already started, bills always get names. They get funny things. We give them an act. Love them both act. Love it. Some of these look like, one of them that we're doing almost looks like the Animal Rights Act with the letters that we put between them. But as we go forward to the 2026 legislation, we have to look at what do we do to impact that culture. Moving the pills, abortion pills, up to a scheduled on what we call the drug schedule. So it has more teeth in it when you're illegally shipping it or distributing it into Kentucky illegally. Now, what are other states doing that are they have shield laws? Those states that are marketing, that have doctors that are either treating women from Kentucky or that are ordering the pills for them, they have shield laws to try to protect the doctors in their state. But we're monitoring court cases all the time on those shield laws. So it's something that we're looking at in case we get challenged. The other side of what we call it the Abortion Pill Education Act, which will have a lot in it, is that we want civil penalties. So we want every woman in Kentucky, especially if she's on state Medicaid, we would write this into the act, or if she shows up in the emergency room, she needs to know, and those doctors need to know why they're treating her. And she is going to be given information that she has a right to litigate her provider. And should she die, her family has a right to civilly litigate the provider. Is that going to end it? But we have to attack it so the abortion providers across this country and in other countries will not want to do business in Kentucky. We have to end it so they will not want to do business in our state. Now, coupled with that, death by mail, death by travel, we have assisted suicide. assisted euthanasia. It is now legal in 12 states and growing in the District of Washington. It is legal in Canada. 1 in every 20 deaths in Canada are what they call medically assisted aid in dying. 1 in 20. And by 2027, Canada will allow it for mental illness and for minors. So again, misplaced compassion. And so we'll be talking about that a lot. So a bill that will sort of mirror what we just talked about on the abortion pills will be this trafficking to other states. We can't stop someone going to another state, but we have to let their families know that they have the right. I'm going to give you a case just real quick that happened. A man in Kentucky, his family did not go to law enforcement, but came to us later and talked about their father lingering 19 hours. They were at his bedside. They did not know what had really occurred, but he was dying and had a note, please don't call hospice again or do not call the hospital. They stayed by his bedside as much as he suffered. These assisted suicide medications, assisted suicide means someone is assisting you to die. Euthanasia means a doctor is administrating it to you. So it's two different things. We have a law that it's outlawed in Kentucky. He had received his packet. They didn't know it. They found it later with his information and a note that he had received this packet of pills. His neighbor came and then left, helped him to administer the drugs, the barbiturates and the combination, but he lingered for 19 hours before his heart finally stopped. The family didn't go to law enforcement, but they did call us, so we know that it is happening. We know these drugs are coming in illegally into the Commonwealth of Kentucky and to other states. And so working with the General Assembly, we've already started early conversations. These are some of the areas that we will be working on to try to put, and with Family Foundation, to put as much pressure. So we will need all of you, when you get those notes from us, it says, or that text, or those emails, please call your legislators. We need your voices are so important. I think you gave the numbers of how many calls that went into Frankfurt. Can I talk on one more subject that we're working on? Do I have time? Maybe time. So a couple other areas that some of you who get my emails, I've been doing a 3-part series and I've been speaking public on a subject. It's a little bit touchy if you don't understand it. We understand couples struggling with infertility. I often say when I see someone out and they'll say, why didn't you speak to me? Well, they were probably, I was a nurse practitioner. I didn't know them with their clothes on, and they usually see me in scrubs, and they didn't know me with my clothes on. So I don't normally identify with patients, but infertility used to be 1 in 26 couples, 1 in 19, 1 in 18, 1 in 12. It is now 1 in 6 couples at some time during their married or their relationship life are experiencing infertility and the high rate of turning to IVF. Set that aside. We don't know. And we know that I was talking to friends here today that have their children were conceived by IVF. So this is nothing condemning IVF. We're not going there. This is a very tender subject. But what we don't know is how many lives are created, how many lives are in cryo nurseries, are in cryo-suspended here in Kentucky. The only tracking that we have is done nationally. We know that 3% of approximately of the lives that are achieved, but what about the lives that are left to render, that could be adopted? Do we have, they're called snowflake babies. There's a former member of the General Assembly. He adopted 4 snowflake babies and gave them a home and gave that his wife's uterus was the home for those children to thrive. So this is only statistical reporting so that we understand how many lives are created, how many are successful implantation and bring forth a child, how many children are still out there, and what happens if the couple decides they've completed their family planning, with all respect to them, but they no longer have the money to support those embryos in cryo nurseries. Is there a plan for it? So this is more of a learning phase for us to understand and not an attack or at IVF, but to understand and maybe help make a plan in the future to encourage embryo or what we call snowflake adoption. And the only other tough subject is commercial surrogacy. We're not talking about altruistic. That means where you carry a child maybe for your sister or your neighbor, and they pay your medical bills. We're talking about the industrialization, the commercialization of the wombs of a woman and selling the child. We've all heard the recent cases of the home in mega mansion in California. There were 31 children conceived by different surrogates in that home. They're now under investigation for child abuse. They just said they wanted a big family, but now they're looking into them for human trafficking. The United States is the one country that does not have any restrictions or guidelines. In our state, we have no guidelines. But in other countries, just recently, and I'm not a fan of the UN, as most of you might know, but the UN has put out a ban, called for a ban on the commercialization, the selling and renting of the uterus of women. The first time I became interested, I was visiting my friend over here's home state of Texas. Our grandson was graduating from the Air Force, and I saw billboards. Surrogates needed $100,000, and I started looking into it. As soon as he started publishing a series of articles on this concern about commercializing and selling children and human trafficking, the commercialization companies, the surrogacy companies, started reaching out to me. Most of them are not even in the United States and just want to know why we're against it. So these are issues that will be topics for the next legislation. I've got some fact sheets on them here just so you can take and learn a little bit more about them as we move forward.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing all that, Addia, particularly at the end, because it makes me come back to our very first panel with Josh Wood, with them before us, and reminding us that we're increasingly living in a society that views children as commodities, and puts the desires of adults with very little consideration on the impact on children. So these are incredibly important things to be talking about and to be looking at addressing. Senator Tichenor, I know we've got some important things to talk with you about, but I want to bring Representative Nemes in for just a minute, and thank you for joining us on very short notice, like 30 minutes ago. Representative Nemes is the House Majority Whip, so he's part of the leadership team, and I know we're mainly looking forward. But so much of what we're continuing to have to deal with in the abortion context is we're up against a billion-dollar industry that is deceptive at every front. The media is deceptive. Our governor is deceptive. And the legislature took some really strong action in House Bill 90 this session to really push back and to provide clarity into the law because the abortion industry and so many others were trying to confuse women, confuse the medical community. So I wanted just to provide you an opportunity to share a little bit more about how that effort came together, because it really was an effort that involved a lot of folks, and particularly some in leadership, to help make that come together at the end of the day.
Yeah, and also everybody on this panel was involved in making sure that happened. So first of all, thank you for having me. I don't think I had 30 minutes, but I'm
3 minutes. Sorry.
That's right. That's all right. I'm happy to do it. Josh Calloway, who couldn't make it, is one of our stalwart legislators. I'm not a great replacement for him, but I'll do my best. So about the summer of 2024, we had passed a law that outlawed abortion, obviously, but it had a protection for the life of the mother. And there were horror stories from a couple states around the country that things were happening where women were presenting, their lives were in danger, but the doctors were scared to treat them, and then they were sending them home or whatever, and things very bad were happening. So Kentucky's ACOG, their chapter of ACOG, the OBs and gynecologists called me and their legislative liaison and said, hey, is there anything we can do to get this done? And I thought, there's no chance, because as soon as you talk about abortion, everybody freaks out and they don't want to have a rational conversation. On the left, they just go nuts. And so I thought, there's no way we can get this done, but why don't you try to take a chance, an effort? They drafted some language. Obviously, I called Addia immediately, said, Addia, here's some language. I don't really like what they've got together, but let's see if we can take their interest and get something that will save the mother and the baby to the best extent we possibly can, because they think there's a problem with the law, and there might be a woman in Kentucky that presents and her life's in danger, and the doc can't treat her, and nobody wants that. So Addia and some others went to the table, redrafted some things. We got Representative Kim Mosier involved, and a few others. Representative Nancy Tate obviously was very important. She's the head of our Right to Life chapter or caucus in the House and in the Senate, in the General Assembly. So we got all those that group together. We redrafted some of the things. They went for a kind of a repeal of the abortion laws. Obviously, that was not what we were talking about, but they swung from the fences on their side, which is kind of why I was saying I don't think anything could get accomplished. Anyway, move forward. I got Addia and this fellow named Dr. Goldberg. He's in charge of, or they're kind of like the leader of the ACOG in Kentucky. I got those two on the phone, and effectively they committed that they were not going to get off the phone until they figured it out. They did figure it out because the issue was so important. We share the bill with the other side. Initially, the person that we shared it with was for it, and then she called the governor. And then all of a sudden, a couple hours later, she was against it in a big way. So we knew, how that was going to happen. That's why I said earlier I didn't think anything could get accomplished. They don't come to the table, I think, in good faith on this issue. So we go back and we've got the bill. We got exactly like we want it. I talked to House leadership. House leadership's all in. We say, okay, we got to get this done. This is very important. And then we talk to Senate leadership. They think the same thing. We inform all of our members, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's exactly what it says. Let's roll with it. And then so at the later in the session, we put it on a bill and we pass it. And it's important for two reasons. One, because we want to protect the baby and the mother at all, to the extent that we possibly can. And if there was a problem with the law, then we needed to fix it. And there was a potential problem with the law. We think it was good the way it was, but we understand that some OBs needed some clarification. We wanted to give it to them, so we gave it to them. The other reason that it's really important is this. Obviously, the left doesn't like our pro-life laws, so they've challenged them. And we, unfortunately, our Kentucky Supreme Court is the only place where the Democrats still roam, except for the governor. We'll take care of that in a couple of years. So that we don't get that's right. We don't get a fair shot at the Kentucky Supreme Court. So we didn't, and we had heard a bunch of things about how they think our laws are so extreme. They don't have exceptions. They don't even protect the life of the mother. And so the ACLU and others were making that argument saying, hey, courts, you need to knock this Kentucky law down because it doesn't even protect the life of the mother and all those kinds of things. That was their first thing they said. So we decided, one, most importantly, protect the lives. But number two, take that complete, I almost said another B word. I'll say take that completely baloney argument away from the other side in court so they can't demagogue the issue. And so we did it for those two reasons. And I know, Addia, you've got something you want to say about that process. But that's kind of the process that we went through. That was started by ACOG. We fixed it, and then we
well,
made sure
and
we
I'm
got it
just
done.
going to jump in here and share, too. And I know I shared this story with Addia. I can't remember if I shared it with you, Representative Nemes, but when the hearing came together for House Bill 90, I was sitting in the back, and the head of Planned Parenthood was talking to someone sitting next to me. I didn't realize it was one of the abortionists that was going to come and testify against the bill. And she was reading over the language for the first time, and I heard her say to the head of Planned Parenthood, there's some good clarifications in here. What is wrong with this language?
That's right.
And the head of Planned Parenthood grabbed this lady by the knee and said, no, we have to kill this bill.
That's right.
And it was just another reminder to me that, again, the abortion industry is not about helping women. They're about keeping their industry open because it's how they make billions of dollars. And then, fast forward, of course, the governor's veto statement of that bill literally was a regurgitation of Planned Parenthood's screed of a press release.
David, do you think he wrote that?
No.
Planned Parenthood probably wrote it. That's right.
It was lifted off their webpage, their statement against the bill. He just stuck that into the language.
Literally.
About their veto, though.
Yeah.
I'm glad the governor vetoed the bill. I'm glad when he vetoes any bill because my favorite day of the year is Easter because our Lord and Savior has risen to save our souls. My second favorite day of the year is Christmas because God became man. My third favorite day of the year, veto override day. Because
rise again.
Because what's the only thing better than voting for a good bill once? Voting for it twice.
I may have heard that one before, but I agree with
Jason some credit over here. He didn't, there's a part, that bill went dark. We disappeared off the radar screen for weeks because when I saw Planned Parenthood, we tried to show it to him and she was like, that's a horrible bill. We were on KET, that's a horrible bill. And so Representative Tate and I were on, so we just went dark, didn't talk about it. didn't say anything. And then, and a lot of prayer. I think we were meeting in your office 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning every week, prayer.
Praying the rosary.
Praying. And it was just 3 of us. And then by the end of session, the room was filled in the representative's office. It's never happened like that before. I mean, it was amazing.
Yep.
But it took one bill that was a good bill, that was the birthing center bill. It took another pro-life bill that we had worked on since I was a legislator, and that's perinatal palliative care. And the last time that was presented, all the Democrat women and Planned Parenthood walked out and held a press conference and said, remember that, David? All they want is to make women carry dead babies in the room. It was hideous. That bill was put on it, and then this clarifying language. And the language, I laugh because it's a Christian and a Jewish doctor worked all day on a Saturday, and I even said to him, can you do this? Because, well, it's their Sabbath. Can we talk and work on this? But the language was, what's not an abortion? And so miscarriage, what we would think about as stillbirth, ectopic pregnancy, molar pregnancy. They hated that because all of the things that they've thrown back in every case that people couldn't care because of our laws were taken away. The fight was taken away from them. So now that's a model for other states, and I just have to say thank you to Representative Nemes and all the legislators, because it was stellar. We were kind of stealth until the last, 48, 72 hours, and then a storm hit, and I don't think they knew what hit them. So thank you all.
And we're gonna need to do it again on some important issues like the chemical abortion pill, as was discussed. Okay. You've waited a long time. We appreciate Senator Tichenor. Have an important issue to talk with you about that was already mentioned, but I know you have introduced Women's Bill of Rights, a statewide privacy act to protect female spaces and to simply define what it means to be a male and a female for the last several sessions. We know UK's own Riley Gaines has been a champion for this. Was in Kentucky just a couple weeks ago and encouraged all the legislators in attendance that we needed to get this done this session. Why is this such an important issue to you? Why do we need a statewide bill to protect the privacy, safety, and dignity of the women of Kentucky?
It's just common sense. I can't believe we have to try to pass legislation to define a woman, but we have seen this mad craze to take women's spaces, take our privacy, take our roles, and hand them over to men who want to say that they're women. And it's disgusting. It is such an affront to me as a woman, as a mother, and as a future grandmother to think that my kids could have to deal with this continually. And it just needs to be taken care of. It's just common sense.
Absolutely. I also know you are incredibly interested and a champion on education issues. And as we mentioned earlier, and this was a question I was going to ask to Representative Callaway as well, thankful for the work that was done on House Bill 4 to get DEI out of public universities, but we know it's still an issue in other realms of government, including in K through 12 education. Here in Fayette County, in Jefferson County, Fayette County here, they've almost I think they had a school board meeting in the middle of the legislative session when HB 4 was being debated, where they made it clear they were doubling down on their DEI offices here in the public school system. Talk to us about that issue and why it's so important to get these discriminatory efforts out of our schools altogether.
There's a lot of reasons why we need to remove it. Ultimately, I mean, so many. Education's failing. We're not doing well, and this is their top priority. It has not produced measurable results to improve student learning at all. It cost a tremendous amount of money, and especially in those larger districts, JCPS in particular, I think I was able to tally with programs and salaries over $30 million, and that was a couple of years ago. So who knows what it is now, especially if these districts are doubling down. So one of the things that has gotten me fired back up again about this issue is what happened a couple of weeks ago with Irina Zarutska, if you remember that case of the poor girl, white girl, sitting on the subway who was murdered, and we all got to see it. Like, we hear cases, and But this one, he said, I got that white girl. It was very clear. It was an anti-white crime. And the indifference to the people who watched it happen. And my first thought was, this is the fruit of the seeds that have been sown in our society. And we have watched this move through our at all levels of education, in post-secondary and very heavily in K-12, but it's throughout all of our agencies too. And we have got to stop this. We need to go back to a merit-based everything, merit-based learning, and help kids as they need them, but don't discriminatorily separate kids based off of their skin color. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it doesn't do anything but cause division. This equity of outcomes is an impossible task. It's a moving target you'll never be able to nail. And of course, if you're on the list of inclusion and things that they deem to be inclusive worthy, good for you. If you believe something separately, like LifeWise is trying to push, then you're out. You are not included in that. So DEI is just not been effective in any way. And it's interesting just thinking about LifeWise in particular. I'm like up front watching this battle happen in Oldham County, where I represent and live, and where I went to school as well. And the opposition is against Christianity. It is against that moral instruction, because I tell you, they are teaching moral instruction in our schools, but it is antithetical to the gospel of Christ. That is what is being pushed in our schools. So the outrage that we're seeing against an organization like LifeWise is solely because it's not the morals that they want. They want the morality of there's an oppressor and there's an oppressed, and we have to fight against whiteness and so many things that are just terribly divisive. So I'm getting more passionate about it as the session's coming up, and it's a battle that we've tried to fight for several years in the General Assembly, and thankfully we got post-secondary taken care of. But it gets weary when you're fighting the same thing over and over again, but I'm ready to go at it again.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting wary, but recognizing that the Lord provides, the state of Texas, going back to the other issue, the privacy issue, it was, my goodness, 2017, I think, when we were working, and I was working with the Counterpart Family Policy Council in Texas at that time, when the first Texas Privacy Act was filed, because already then there were issues happening all over the state, and local ordinances that have been passed and so forth. And they just, in a special session a couple days ago, Governor Abbott just signed Texas's statewide Privacy Act. I'm hoping we don't have to work for 7 or 8 sessions or 7 or 8 years in a row, but we got to keep pushing on what we know is right. Addia, I know there's a couple of other issues that I wanted you to have an opportunity to speak to that are pro-life related. Obviously, we've continued to advocate for the Baby Olivia Act. And as we're speaking about education, there's a number of states now. Momentum has really picked up on that issue. This bill, called the Baby Olivia Act after Live Action's beautifully done 3D animation video, but it's really just about ensuring that students have an opportunity to see the truth about the development of a preborn child in the womb. That's an important piece of legislation. Love to you to speak to that. And then also the medical conscience issue that we've already talked about, that I know and so thankful that Kentucky Right to Life has been supportive of. Because there's many areas of conscience, but certainly the abortion context is front and center when it comes to wanting to ensure that we have an environment in Kentucky where every medical professional is able to operate according to their pro-life beliefs.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Baby Olivia will be back in 2026 live and well. We had her on a live jumbo screen on the lawn of the Capitol this year. And I'm getting called from private and Christian schools that are implementing, and it's really human development. It's been moved out of the school. There was a news clip a couple weeks ago. A news reporter called me and she said, doesn't seem like pro-life or family issues get much coverage. I'm now new at the station, but I do, and she told me her own personal story. But she said, I do want to give it more coverage. But if you see, I think it was on WHAS, but if you see Google it and you see the beginning of the clip, it's a young woman who's doing human development using Planned Parenthood's information. And for many schools, I think there's some that are out here doing absence education. I don't know if they're still here. That's what many of the schools implemented for many years. We fought it when I was in Northern Kentucky. But what they did a lot of times is it just removed it. And so to know how we're created, if you could see children stand and adults stand in front of that screen and go, that was it. And to see that life develop, it's just amazing. So that legislation will be back. It will be proposed that it be positioned in our schools. We know Christian and parochial schools have already started putting it in, but that will be back at the 2026 session. I've already heard from legislators that will be moving that. Another bill that I said earlier, I joked about it, I think we should call it the sort of like the comeback conscience bill, CCB. We give letters and acronyms for everything. But it has been the medical conscience bill. Last year it was called the, let's see, that was what would it do? Oh, the Healthcare Heroes
And Retention Act.
Retention Act.
And we should mention
Recruitment and Retention Act.
And I should mention Senator Donald Douglas, who I know was with us,
Yes.
has championed that bill in the Senate the last 2 sessions.
Yes, he has. And he says he plans on filing, I think, if it's permissible, the first day. But why is it important? Because I belong to the Christian, as a practitioner, the Christian Catholic Medical Association. I can't tell you how many physicians or healthcare providers have been sanctioned. They don't talk about it, or they've been written up because a lot of doctors work for the hospitals now. They've just made an innocent mistake. Someone came in that used to be John and now he's Jane. And he sees their patient, calls them by the wrong name, it is reported. It wasn't even an act of conscience, it was just a mistake, and they are sanctioned. But everyone should have the ability to not practice or perform a procedure that would be in violation of their conscience. And it's basic, it's simple, and it is their God-given right. Whether it is an abortion, whether it is something to do with gender and affecting children. This doctor happened to be at Cincinnati Children's, where they do many, many procedures over there. But he was sanctioned, and he was docked pay, like for 3 weeks, and he was suspended just for a simple mistake. This is critical because your conscience is your guide. It is your I say we've got that north. We operate with the north, and when the north gets wobbly, we're in trouble. So they are trying to operate as professionals and give the best care, but they shouldn't have to be able to have their north pushed off, their compass pushed, and serve their patients. So that legislation will be back. It might be called the Comeback Conscience Bill Act this year. I'm not sure.
Sounds good to me. As we bring this panel to a close, just wanted to provide everyone a quick little opportunity, 1 or 2 minutes. If there was another issue that you wanted to share that you think is important for folks to know about heading into the 2026 session, we'll start with Representative Nemes.
I'll say 5 seconds, and JCPS has to be improved. They're incapable of doing it internally. They're incompetent. Their priorities are not in order. They're $188 million in the hole.
Jefferson County.
Jefferson County Public Schools has to be improved. We're going to constantly look at that. They're completely incompetent, and our kids aren't related but different. The Big Beautiful Bill had a provision in it that allowed states to opt into scholarship tax credit organizations. And so and you guys need to know this, and everybody needs to do it because it doesn't cost you $1. We're going to opt in Kentucky, and then every single taxpayer that owes the federal government more than $1,700 can do this. You can give $1,700 to an organization that's going to be created up. David and the crew will let everybody know when it passes and how you can get it done. And that money, dollar for dollar, and it doesn't cost you anything, will go to school choice in Kentucky. So we couldn't get it. Right. We couldn't get it done in Kentucky. The legislature did it. The Supreme Court wrongfully overturned it. We'll handle that business in 2030 when they're up for re-election. But the business we need to handle now is we need to opt in as Kentucky, and then we need to make sure that we are getting the word out as much as possible. $1,700 a taxpayer. We can do more than the state plan was ever going to, so God has provided, and we're going to get that done.
Senator Tichenor.
Long growing list at my office, and I got in trouble for filing too many bills last year, but it is what it is. But some of the education things, so there's a MAHA task force, and we had a few people come and talk about physical education and just looking at how can we improve how can we make Kentucky healthy again in the education front. So I'm looking at reduced screen time. I don't know if any of you all have kids, grandkids, and their eyes are hurting them. They are doing work on computers 6-7 hours a day. And that's really detrimental to their eye health for the future. The optometrist, is it optometrist, ophthalmologist? I always get those backwards. The guy I go to for these, the eye doc, he is seeing patients come as young as 8 who are developing what I developed at 43 with a nearsightedness and farsightedness and all that stuff. So that's really disturbing to me, and I think that can be a part of the Mahamnibus bill is what I'm going to call it. Getting our kids active with PE, less focus on, we talk so much about mental health issues for children, and I think a lot of the focus on that is causing some of the mental health issues. We have the trauma-informed approach, which has broad brush basically delegated everyone as having some type of trauma in their life, even the simplest thing. So I think we need to get outside more, and I think we need to get our kids physically active, and that will absolutely help their mental health too. So that's some of the stuff I'm working on.
We need to get kids off screens, and that's certainly going to be a big topic of conversation. And I commend to folks on that topic. There's a new book called Tech Exit by Claire Morrell, Tech Exit. I encourage folks to get that bill and read about what's happening to our young people because of our addiction to screens, and how, even from a public policy standpoint, we have an obligation to protect kids and empower parents to have a bigger say in what happens in that arena. With that being said, I'm incredibly thankful for Senator Tichenor, Addia, for Representative Nemes for joining us, and for this conversation. Thank y'all so much.